Hello folks, welcome back to Baker Bits. Today's bit is going to be sort of a continuation or follow-up on bit number 6, where I showed you how I tie a Capps and Coleman rig for spider rigging. Today I'm going to show you how I tie a Kentucky rig. A Kentucky rig is a setup wherein your hooks or jigs, whichever you prefer or combination thereof, are above your weight. The weight will be on the bottom and the hooks or jigs will be up above them. A lot of people just tie these rigs straight to their main line that runs to their reel. I like to pre-tie rigs and wrap them on these tackle buddy setups or other methods, whatever you use to store your rigs. I don't like to tie rigs when I'm in the boat if I break off. A lot of people are very proficient at that and, like I say, can tie them to their main line very quickly. I don't like to do that. I like to just cut the old rig off if it hasn't broken off completely, grab a pre-tied rig and put it on. And so in order to have a pre-tied rig, I tie them with a two-way swivel at the top and a little snap swivel at the bottom to hold the weight. Again, you can tie these in many different fashions. You can tie them without any of that hardware if you want to just tie a loop at the top and a loop at the bottom. I like having the swivels and the snap swivel. So that's the way I do it. That's what I'm going to show you, but you can modify these. I don't know who invented this rig or came up with it, but my guess is it was somebody from Kentucky. At any rate, I use a number 5 crane swivel that I get at Bass Pro Shop. Why I use a size 5 is because it is the smallest size I find that where the eye of the swivel will fit over the nipple of one of these tackle buddies. I used a very small snap swivel at the bottom, as small as I can get away with. And so I usually buy a size 7 crane swivel, crane snap swivel. All right, let's get started and I'll show you. Again, I use the same line and hooks that I use for my Capps and Coleman rig, so I'm not going to go over in detail that again. You can go back and look at the other video. But what I do, I've basically got the same marks on my desk that I had for my Capps and Coleman rig. I just, first of all, pull out some line. I'm going to tie just a double hook rig. So I take my hooks, and the first thing you want to do is put your 2 hooks on the line. And I go in from the back of the hook. I think it just helps that hook to stand up better. And I just go through, pull that hook down, do the same thing, put another hook on, same way, and slide it down. And then I just pull out enough line, no specific length. I want to end up with my swivel about a foot above my first hook. So it's a little harder to gauge the distances on these than it is when I'm tying a Capps and Coleman rig. So I just first pull out enough line that I know I'll have plenty after I tie my hook on to come up about a foot and then tie on my upper swivel. Now, the way I tie my hooks is just a simple, what I call an overhand loop knot. I just get a loop in my line. And again, I'll show you this on some heavier lines so maybe you can see it better. But I just take my 2 fingers of my left hand and I make a loop or a wrap around it and bring myself enough tag so that I can then put the hook through that loop, and I go through there 4 times. Kind of awkward. I don't take that loop off my fingers when I'm doing it like I'm doing here, but I'm trying to demonstrate for you that loop. And then, so you end up with a loop. You've gone through it 4 times, and you can pinch either side of that loop. If you pinch it toward the hook and start pulling, it makes the dropper shorter. If you hold it away from the hook and start pulling, it'll make the dropper longer. So I just kind of regulate in between. I like a dropper about 2 inches or so. And so I'll just start pulling on one end and then just kind of gauge it by letting loose of the other. And I pull that tight. And so then when I've got my main line, then I've got a dropper. That one's a little longer than I'll usually tie, but that's the setup. And so then what I'll do is I'll use my marks on my desk, and I like my hooks to be about a foot or 14 inches apart. So what I do is come to where the loop meets the main line, and I put it on one of my marks, and I come down 18 inches, and I bring the other, I've already got the other hook on the line, so I'll slide that up first, and then I'll measure 18 inches between the first loop down to where the hook is, and then I pinch and create another loop and simply do the same thing. I'll tie that, what I call overhand loop knot, run that hook through there 4 times, pull it down tight. It's hard to see. I'm trying not to have lights glaring in the camera. And so there I've got my line with 2 drops on it. You probably can't see that very well. And then I'll measure. I like my weight to be about a foot below my bottom hook. So I'll just take that, and I know it's a foot from that mark to that mark. Measure that, pinch that off. Then I take one of my snap swivels and I just tie a Palomar knot, just like I do for my Captain Coleman rig knots. Just an overhand knot. And then pull that swivel through there, wet it, cinch it down. And then I cut that off. So then I come down to the other end. Like I say, I like to have my swivel about a foot above my top hook. That's, you know, you can use any measurement you want. That's just what I do. So again, I'll measure off about a foot. We'll do the same thing. We'll tie a Palomar knot. I take my swivel, run that line through one end, overhand knot, run the swivel through the loop, pull it tight, cut off the tag end, and there's my rig. So I've got 2 hooks, a swivel at one end, a snap swivel at the other. And then for weights, of course, you can use any weight you want. Yeah, a lot of people use bell sinkers. I usually use a heavier weight when I'm using this rig. I use this rig most of the time when I'm fishing deeper and I want my baits down close to the bottom, and I want to move a little faster. So if you use a heavier weight, it'll keep that line down. You can feel better, and you can bounce that heavier weight on the bottom to keep it right near the bottom. And I'll usually use either a cannonball style weight, which I pour myself with the Do It mold. That's a 2 ounce. Or even better, I like these pencil weights that I also pour with a Do It mold, and I'll show you the mold information on this pencil weight. The pencil weight mold I have from Do It has 3 cavities. It has a 1 1/4, 1 3/4, and 2 1/2 size. And you can put the little eyelet in both ends of each mold if you want. I don't see the need to have the eyelet in both ends, except when I pour the larger mold, the 2 1/2 ounce mold, I'll put an eyelet in both ends because I usually end up cutting that in half to make 1 1/4 ounce weights. And that's the size I typically like to run. So again, like I said, I've got a mold for the cannonballs. My cannonball mold has 4 cavities from size 1 ounce up to 4 ounces, and I'll pour those, and that's what I use. So when I'm out on the water, I've got a sack full of different sizes of these weights, and I'll decide at that time how deep I'm fishing, how fast I want to run, and I'll decide then what size weight I want to use. The faster I want to run and the deeper I'm going to be, the heavier the weight I want. And so it's real simple. Obviously, you just put that eye of that weight in there. You take the other end. I didn't think about it in my last video, but I had a question: how do I tie my rig onto my main line? Well, I'll usually run one of these little snap swivels just like I put on the bottom of this rig at the end of my main line, so I can tie these rigs on and off very quickly. But if I'm out fishing and in a hurry or in a tournament and I break off and I break that little snap swivel off, sometimes I'll just tie it direct to this eye, and you can't do that with a Palomar knot, so I'll just use a trilene knot. But that makes up my Kentucky rig and how I tie it. So I'll get set up with this heavier line. I'll tie one more. Hopefully you can see it a little bit. All right, so I've got my 100-pound braid, yellow braid out here for demonstration purposes again. Got my two great big 8/0 hooks so you can see them. I've got a larger swivel. I didn't have a real great big swivel, but a little bigger swivel and a bigger snap swivel for the bottom. And I've got one of my 4-ounce cannonball sinkers. So again, I start by putting the two hooks on, go from the back side of the hook through the eye, just slide that down, let it slide down there loose, take the second hook, do the same thing. And I just pull that down and give myself plenty of room up here to come back and tie my swivel about a foot above the hook. Take the hook, double that line over. So I just come down, I do my double loop knot, pull myself enough line so that I can go over my two fingers, and I just run that hook through that loop 4 times. Okay, so I've got that hook through that loop 4 times. Take it off my fingers, so there I've got that loop. I pinch down on, I usually pinch down on the end toward the hook first and start pulling it. And then I'll kind of hold that and pull it. And like I say, I'll just work back and forth till I sort of adjust to the size dropper I want. That's one. And then I'll come down 18 inches from where that dropper connects to the main line. Got to get my hook first. Pull your hook up the line so you can get your hook. Come down 18 inches with your hook. And then you're making another loop knot 4 times. There are a lot of different knots you can use for this. A lot of people use different knots. This one's easy for me to tie and quick, and I've never had a problem with it. So again, start pulling that tight, pull that down, and there you have another dropper loop. So you've got your main line, you got your 2 hooks tied on. As you can see, those loops are not the same size. I'm not paying that much attention right now to show you this. But you got your 2 drops. Then I'll come from where this bottom one attaches to the main line, and I'll come down and measure about a foot. Come up from that, pinch your line together, take your swivel, snap swivel on the bottom, do your overhand knot, open up your loop, run your swivel through, tie it off, wet it, and pull it tight. This braid's hard to do, this heavy braid. but you get the idea. Pull it down. Cut it off. Okay, so then I go to the other end, go to my top hook, measure about 12 inches up from that, pinch that down, take my two-way swivel and do the same thing. Just an overhand knot, go through the loop, makes a Palomar knot, wet it down, pull it tight, cut it off. And then, so you got your two-way swivel at the top to tie to your main line going to your reel. You got your two droppers, and then your weight will be snapped on at the bottom, whatever weight you choose to use. And then the way I store these is I'll take my tackle buddy, there are these little nipples on here. And so you go to your two-way and put the eye of that in that, on that little nipple on the tackle buddy, and I just wrap down to that first hook, and then I'll stick that hook in the tackle buddy so it's secure, and then just keep wrapping down to the next hook. Probably blocking you out here with that, but just keep wrapping down to the next hook, push that hook into that plastic tackle buddy, and then you come on around. Now you've got a snap here and no real good way to secure that, so what I do is take a rubber band, which I don't have out here, I should have, and put a rubber band on that, and I wrap the rubber band around and then hook it to that nipple. Just like this one I've already tied here. So I've come around and put the two hooks in there, and I come around, I put my rubber band on that snap swivel, and I just come on around and then put the end of that rubber band right on that nipple, and that holds them on there. So you're out on the water, you break off, you want one, you go to your rubber band first, you take the last thing you tied on your tackle buddy, just start unwrapping it. Unwrap down to that first hook. Take the first hook out. Just keep unwrapping. You'll get to where the second hook is in the tackle buddy. Take it out. Just keep unwrapping all the way down to the swivel that comes off the nipple. And there you have your pre-tied rig. This one's got a jig and a hook. Get rid of your rubber band, put your weight on, tie on your main line, and there you have it. So that's how I do a Kentucky rig, and one of the ways I store it, I'm going to do another video like I told you in the last one about another way to store these wraps other than on these tackle buddies, which is a little cheaper, but that's to come. So just like with the Caps and Coleman rigs, you can buy those commercially. I gave you a link to that in the last video. You can buy these Kentucky rigs commercially as well. Wally Marshall, Mr. Crappie, sells those. You can buy them through Bass Pro Shop. If you'd rather buy them than tie them, you can do that. They're commercially available. Again, I just like to tie them. If you have any questions, write your question in the comment section down below. I read those comments. I try to respond to every one of them. I'll try to answer your question if I can. But that's it. Thanks for watching. I hope you'll hit the subscribe button down below. If you're not a subscriber, hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Send me a question if you have any. I'll have a link down below to my other videos, to my YouTube channel. So I hope you'll go and watch the other videos as well. But again, thanks for being with me.